right, independent thinkers, we're here with another movie review from a Matt Damon movie of all movies, and this is based on population control. The movie is called Downsizing, and it's a follow-up kind of to the Suburbicon movie that you can see that he did alongside with George Clooney that tackled integration into the first white suburb community. This film is basically adults that get a procedure. They're going to live in this somewhat fantasy place that's built for them. It saves them money, it saves them food, it's less pollution, better for the environment. All of the major talking points that are pro population control are in this film, even if they're subtle. You got to really pay attention. Now, we understand that the United Nations has pointed out that whites will be a minority by 2015 in the United States, and they're already a minority globally. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Now, the film I would say, is an okay film. It's worth watching. But there's three major takeaway points and three major tactics that we might see play out in the real world that play out in the film. They're definitely playing out in the real world, but these, could possibly be the main tactics that we see play out. The first major thing that I noticed, first major tactic, was there were no children hardly in the film, except we'll get to the third point, which is where the children were. But mainly, there were no children in the film at all. Even when they were shrunk, the adults were shrunk and went and lived to their new town or whatever. There were no children. There weren't any schools or anything. So that right there, and that subconsciously is telling you, they're not really thinking about the children. They're thinking about the future, but they're not thinking about the future. And we know recently Planned Parenthood, they made a tweet saying that Disney characters and abortion and just putting these seeds into these children's heads about getting abortions and thinking about abortions, and the next Disney princess needs to have an abortion. We understand that Planned Parenthood performs over 300,000 abortions per year, and of course they're not the only abortion clinic in the country. So they're kind of are the front runners spearheading this movement. The second major tactic was the better environment, better atmosphere. The weather was perfect. At the end, they watched a beautiful sunset. It was clean. There was no litter, no crime, not spotless. I don't even think there was any police really in the film like that. So very, very clean film, because Bill Gates, one of probably the biggest, most notable person that is pro population control. He says the population control needs to shrink at least 4 times the size. It needs to be reduced by at least 4 times. One of his main arguments is that as there's more people, the world heats up, gets hotter, and there's global warming. So he's saying we have to reduce the population, we reduce the disease, we reduce the need for more food, different things like that. But as we've seen, there's a recent Facebook post somewhere that Jeff Bezos, who is now the richest man in the world, he has enough money to feed everyone in the world. And Bill Gates, who's been the richest man for decades, he's saying that there's too much of a strain on the environment for food, and it's not enough to feed people. But obviously, if Jeff Bezos has the money to feed people, he has the money to feed people. And lastly, the third tactic is, and there's really no difference than what we see going on today as far as the gap between the rich and the poor, the have and the have-nots. And it kind of puts a philosophical spin on this issue. Is it really about the environment? And it's kind of, it reveals itself in the name, control, the population control. They want to control the population. And it's this third tactic is that only those who can afford it will make it. Those who pay to live in the people who could afford to live there, They lived in this huge rundown project with hundreds of roommates sharing one big screen TV, which is really a small screen TV, probably a little bit bigger than a cell phone because everyone else is 5 inches. So maybe not the cell phone, maybe about a 20 inch, if that. But if hundreds of people can watch a 20 inch TV, there's probably I see there that they think there's a lot of benefits to that. Now, the roommates sharing the big TV reminds you of the prison shows when you see the people outside, they're sitting on the tables or they're playing chess, they're playing cards, and the inmates they have to share the TV while everyone waits out in their room. And that's kind of really almost 3/4 of the way through the film. You kind of see it's kind of a shock where, and I think it was done deliberately, which it was a good editing tactic. But throughout the film, once you see him in the community, it's constantly talking about the benefits and it's showing you how nice it is and the advantages of it. And then you see like, oh wow, okay, this is not too surprising that people are living in poverty, and these people probably can barely afford to make the payments. I think some of them were struggling to make the payments, and just to keep that system going where people generally maybe they felt that maybe they were worse off before they were small, and they felt that being smaller would give them a better situation, and it ends up being the same or even worse. So this is where you finally see the children, you see the handicapped, the disabled, and it tells you those who actually can survive that are poor will still be poor no matter the population size, due to the innate greed within those who control the system. And if all the perks about how much we will be with less people and less poverty, less strain on the environment, less pollution, and we'll have more food, if none of that is going to be solved, then to me, this means that population control is disguised as a front to control the masses with less threat of being outnumbered. So obviously they want the population control, but they want it at the expense, or not at the expense of having too many people that can probably rise up, or so they have to get it at just enough number. And those who, of course, just like now that are in power, they're not gonna give power to those that are being oppressed, basically. But maybe I don't have the answer. Maybe you do. Let us know in the comments. And remember, think independently. Your future depends on it. Stay tuned for more Melanated Media News.